The sedan spun first. 3 cars ahead on the Mercer Street overpass. A white Civic, rear tire blown, the back end swinging wide on the wet pavement in the specific, slow-motion horror of a vehicle losing its argument with physics. Caught the guardrail. The sound arrived a half-second after the impact. Metal on metal, the shriek of it, and then the sudden full stop of a car that had run out of road. Traffic halted. Rain on the windshield. Headlights reflected in the wet asphalt. The overpass on a Wednesday evening in November, 3 lanes of stopped cars, and at the center of it a white Civic pressed against the guardrail with its driver door crumpled inward. Dominic Farrell's car stopped with the rest. His driver, Marcus, looked in the rear view. "I'll call." "Stay here," Dominic said. He was already opening the door. He moved in the rain without a jacket. He had left it on the back seat, which he noticed and immediately stopped noticing. He walked the 30 feet to the Civic with the specific, purposeful stride of a man who had made a decision and was implementing it. He looked through the driver's window. An elderly woman. Slumped against the steering wheel. Not fully unconscious, her eyes were open, but her body had the wrong posture, the heavy forward lean of someone who had lost control of their own weight. A cut across her forehead. Blood moving in a thin line down the left side of her face. Her breathing was the thing that concerned him most. Shallow, irregular, the kind of breathing that told him something was wrong beneath the surface. He tried the door. Crumpled shut. The frame had bent on impact. He stepped back. He put his shoulder into it. Not a burst of force, controlled pressure at the right angle, the kind of leverage that worked on warped metal if you applied it correctly. He had learned this not in any professional context but from a situation years ago that he did not think about directly. The door came open with the specific metallic groan of a thing that had been shaped wrong and was being reshaped again. He leaned in. He put one hand against the woman's shoulder. Carefully, the way you moved someone when you didn't know the extent of the damage. "Hey," he said. "I've got you. Stay with me." Her eyes moved. She was looking at him. He was trying to focus. "Don't move your neck," he said. "Just stay still. Help is coming." He pressed his hand against the cut on her forehead. He had nothing, no first aid, no cloth, so he pressed his palm flat against it because pressure was what it needed and his hand was what he had. She made a sound. "I know," he said. "I know. Stay with me." Her breathing was wrong. He had heard breathing like this before. In rooms he didn't think about, in situations that had required him to be functional when everything around him was not. He knew what this breathing meant and he knew the ambulance was not here yet. He kept his hand on her forehead. He leaned close enough that she could hear him clearly over the rain and the idling engines and the specific ambient noise of a highway overpass at a dead stop. "Stay with me," he said. "Don't close your eyes. Stay with me." Her hand came up. It moved slowly with visible effort and it found his wrist, and it grabbed on with a strength that surprised him. The grip of someone fighting to stay. He looked at her hand on his wrist. He looked at her face. She was 70 maybe. She had white hair pressed against the side of the headrest. She had the kind of face that had been beautiful once and had settled into something better than beautiful. Strong-boned, specific, the face of someone who had lived in it fully. Her eyes were staying open. She was fighting. "Good," he said. "Keep doing that. Don't let go." She didn't let go. "Please," he said. The word came out quieter than he intended. More honest. "Don't die." The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. He stepped back when the paramedics came. He stood on the overpass in the November rain without his jacket, watching them work with her blood on his palm. He did not leave. He followed the ambulance to the hospital in his car. He could not have explained this decision with precision if someone had asked him. He was a stranger. He had done what anyone would do, or what anyone should do, which was different. The debt was paid the moment the paramedics took over. He followed anyway. At Mercy General, in the waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and institutional coffee and the specific anxiety of people waiting for news about people they loved, he sat in a plastic chair and waited for news about someone he did not know. A nurse came to the waiting room at 9:23. She handed him a plastic bag. "Her effects from the vehicle," she said. "The police will need to collect them, but can you hold them until—" "Yes," he said. He took the bag. Inside, a wallet. A phone with a cracked screen. A worn brown leather card holder. And a photograph folded once, the paper soft from being carried. He looked at the photograph. His hands went still. He looked at it again. His breath stopped. Then he looked again. He sat with the photograph for a long time. The waiting room continued around him. A man across the aisle checking his phone, a young couple in the corner with a sleeping child between them, the fluorescent lights doing their flat, indifferent work. Dominic sat with a photograph in his hands and the specific absolute stillness of a man whose internal architecture had just experienced something that all his external walls had been built to prevent. He had not said her name out loud in 11 years. He had not said it because the word had a weight that he had decided he could not carry without cost. He had put it somewhere in the sealed interior of himself, the place where he kept the things that were too significant to process and too painful to discard. He had sealed it and he had built over it, and he had spent 11 years being very good at not reaching for it. The photograph was of a woman in her mid-30s. Dark hair. Standing outside a building he recognized. A red brick apartment building on Callahan Street that had been demolished 4 years ago. Beside her was a teenage boy, 19 years old. His own face, 19 years old, staring back at him from a photograph carried in the wallet of a woman he had just pulled from a crashed car on the Mercer Street overpass. He held the photograph with both hands. He breathed. He looked at the door through which the medical staff had taken her. Her name was Helen Farrell. He had not let himself say that name in 11 years. He said it now, very quietly, in the plastic chair in the waiting room of Mercy General Hospital. Helen Farrell, he said. Just her name. Just the shape of it. He looked at the photograph again. He was 19 in the photograph. Standing beside her with the particular closed posture of a teenager who is not yet sure how to be in photographs. Shoulders slightly turned, not quite fully present. She had her hand on his arm. He was looking at the camera. He was looking slightly away. He remembered that afternoon. A neighbor had taken the photograph. They had been moving something. A table, a piece of furniture from a second-floor apartment to a truck on the street. He had complained about the heat. She had laughed at him. The neighbor had said hold on and taken the photograph and given her a copy later. He had not known she kept it. He pressed the photograph flat on his knee. He thought about the morning she left. He had been 19. He had come downstairs at 7:15. Her coffee cup was on the counter. She made coffee every morning, the old percolator, the smell of it, the specific ambient sound of every morning of his childhood. The coffee was still warm. The cup was still there. She was not. No note. No fight. No explanation. He had called her phone 7 times that day. All 7 calls went to voicemail. He had called the people she knew, neighbors and 2 women from her work. None of them knew anything. None of them had seen her. By the 3rd day he had understood that she had chosen to go. The understanding had cost him something he had never fully inventoried. He had spent 2 years looking. Then he had stopped. Not because he stopped caring. Because continuing to look was destroying his capacity to function, and he was 19 and then 20 and then 21 and he had to function or he had nothing. He stopped. He built walls. He built a great many walls after that. He looked at the door. She had grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. She had not recognized him. She had been slipping in and out, the cut on her head, the shock of the impact, her eyes not fully focusing. She had grabbed a hand that was pressing against her wound and she had held on because holding on was what her body knew to do. She had not known it was him. He put the photograph back in the bag. He held the bag in his lap. A doctor appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. Not for him, for the couple in the corner. He watched them stand, watched their faces do the rapid, helpless assessment of people waiting for medical news. He watched the doctor say something. He watched the relief cross the couple's faces. He looked at the bag in his lap. He had a choice. He could leave the bag with the front desk, say he had to go and walk out the door and drive home and seal this evening behind the same walls that everything else lived behind. Or he could stay. He was Dominic Farrell. He had spent 30 years building walls and spending them selectively on the things that deserved them. He stayed. He did not examine this decision too carefully. He just stayed in the plastic chair with the plastic bag and her photograph inside it and waited to find out whether the woman on the other side of that door was going to be all right. But the choice about what to do with what he knew, that decision was still hours away. And what he was going to learn about why she left was going to be harder than anything he had carried in 11 years. The doctor came at 10:47. Not the same doctor as before. A different one. Tall, mid-50s, with the careful manner of someone who delivered medical information for a living and had learned to make it clear without making it brutal. You came in with the accident patient, the doctor said. The woman from the overpass. Yes, Dominic said. Are you family? He held the plastic bag. He looked at the doctor. Son, he said. The word felt strange in his mouth. Not inaccurate, just unused for so long that it had become unfamiliar. The doctor nodded. She has 2 cracked ribs, he said. A laceration on the forehead that we've sutured. A moderate concussion. He paused. There was also some cardiac irregularity that we're monitoring. She has a history. Her medical information lists a heart condition that's been managed for about 7 years. He looked at Dominic. The accident didn't cause it, but the impact stressed it. We're keeping her overnight, possibly 2 nights. Dominic nodded. She's conscious, he said. In and out, the doctor said. She's resting now. When she's more alert, he paused. She can have visitors in the morning. He left. Dominic sat in the plastic chair. He thought about a heart condition managed for 7 years. He thought about how long 7 years was. What she might have been doing 7 years ago. Where she had been living. Whether she had been alone or with someone. Whether she had been afraid. He looked at the bag. He had not gone through the rest of it. He took out the wallet. Not to take anything. To understand. An Oregon driver's license. She had been living in Oregon. Portland, the license said. She had a Portland address. She had been here, in this city, for reasons he didn't yet know. A medical insurance card. 3 $20 bills folded neatly. 2 receipts from a grocery store also in Portland. A business card for a doctor in Portland. Her cardiologist's name and number, which told him the heart condition was real and actively managed. A small folded piece of paper, separate from the wallet. He unfolded it. It was a handwritten list. The kind of list someone made when they were preparing for something specific. Hotel confirmation number. A street address in this city. A name, Dominic. Just his first name. No last name needed. He stared at the paper. She had come here to find him. He put everything back in the bag. He sat with the bag and the specific vertiginous feeling of a fact arriving that rearranged everything around it. She had left him 11 years ago without a word. And she had come back to find him. He looked at the door through which the doctor had walked. He thought about the heart condition managed for 7 years. He thought about why a person with a managed heart condition would drive across the country. Because the Oregon license meant she had driven or traveled to get here. Why now? Why 11 years later and not 10 or 5 or 2? He thought about the careful way she had written his name on a piece of paper and put it in her wallet. He thought about the coffee cup still warm on the counter. He had never known why she left. He had created narratives over the years. She had been unhappy, she had wanted a different life, she had found something better, she had been afraid of something. He had cycled through them in the early years and then stopped cycling because cycling was the kind of thing that cost more than it produced. He had never known. He was about to find out. But not tonight. Tonight she was on the other side of a door with 2 cracked ribs and a concussion and a cardiac monitor. He found a hotel 3 blocks from the hospital. He took a room. He sat on the edge of the bed with his ruined jacket, blood from the overpass on the sleeve, rain damp throughout, and the plastic bag beside him. He did not sleep. He sat with the picture in his hands until the room got light. At 7:43 the next morning he was back in the waiting room. At 8:15 a nurse came and said she was asking for whoever had been with her at the accident. He stood. He walked to her room. He stood outside the door for a moment. He pressed his hand flat against the door. He thought about 19 years old and a coffee cup still warm. He thought about the way her hand had grabbed his wrist on the overpass. He thought about, please, don't die. He opened the door. She was in the hospital bed with the specific pale quality of someone who had slept badly after something traumatic. The sutures on her forehead. The monitoring equipment doing its steady work. Her white hair against the pillow. She looked at the door. She looked at him. Her face, he watched it happen step by step. The recognition arriving in stages. The eyes focusing. The specific sequence of a person seeing something they had been holding in their mind for years and finding it real. Her mouth opened. Dominic, she said. Just his name. Just the shape of it. He stood in the doorway. He did not move for a long moment. Then he walked in. He pulled the chair to her bedside. He sat. He looked at his mother. Why did you leave? He said. His voice was completely even. Her eyes filled. She looked at her hands on the blanket. I'm going to tell you, she said. All of it. Every word. I've been trying to find a way to tell you for 11 years. She stopped. She looked at him. I thought you were safer without me, she said. Someone told me you would be. He went very still. Someone told you, he said. Yes, she said. Who, he said. He told him the name. And what he felt when he heard it was not grief or shock. It was the cold, complete clarity of finally understanding what had been done to him. She told him from the beginning. Not the morning she left, before that. She told him the months before, the months he had not known were months leading somewhere, the months that looked from the outside like an ordinary year in the life of a mother and her teenage son. Dominic sat in the chair beside her hospital bed and listened. She spoke carefully, the way people spoke when they had been rehearsing something for years and wanted to get it right. His name was Carver Flynn, she said. You knew him as someone connected to Harlan Bree. Dominic's jaw tightened. Harlan Bree. A name from 20 years ago. The man who had been in the periphery of Dominic's world in the early years before Dominic had his own world, when he was 19 and building something and learning the shape of what he was doing. Bree had been older, established, the kind of man who looked like a mentor from a distance and was something else up close. Carver Flynn was Bree's enforcer, Helen said. He came to me in February. You were 18. You had just started to get involved in things I didn't fully understand but could see the direction of. She paused. He told me that if I stayed, if I remained in your life, you would be used as leverage against me. He said Bree had already identified me as a weakness in your emerging position. That men who wanted to apply pressure to you would use me to do it. She looked at her hands. He said the kindest thing I could do for you was to be gone. Dominic looked at the monitor beside her bed. The green line of her cardiac reading doing its patient work. He told you to leave, he said. He told me my presence was a danger to you, she said. And I believed him. Because I looked at who you were becoming and I understood. I understood the world you were entering well enough to understand that having a mother who could be found, who had a known address, who could be picked up on a Wednesday morning, that was a vulnerability. She looked at him. I left to protect you, she said. That's the whole truth of it. He was quiet. He thought about 19 years old. He thought about coming downstairs to a coffee cup still warm and an empty apartment and 7 voicemails that went unanswered. He thought about 2 years of searching. He thought about the walls. You didn't tell me, he said. If I told you, you would have argued with me, she said. You would have said you could protect both of us. You would have tried. She paused. And you would have been right that you could try. But Carver Flynn was specific. He said if I left without explanation, without giving you a direction to look, you would eventually accept it. If I left with an explanation, you would come for me and Bree would be waiting for that. Dominic looked at the floor. He thought about the specific logic of this. He thought about the fact that she was right. He would have argued. He would have said he could handle it. He would have gone looking for her the moment he knew she was hiding from something, and whatever trap Bree had set would have been triggered. He thought about the fact that she was right and it had cost him 11 years. 7 years ago, he said. The heart condition. She looked at her hands. Yes, she said. When did you find out, he said. 7 years ago, she said. A Tuesday. Cardiologist's office in Portland. And you thought. I thought, she said carefully, that I had been living with a decision that had cost both of us something enormous, and that if I ran out of time without fixing it, she stopped. She pressed her lips together. I started trying to figure out how to come back. How to reach you. It took me 4 years to find the right path. And then I was afraid. And then 3 more years passed. She looked at him. I booked the hotel here 2 weeks ago. I drove here yesterday. To find me, he said. To explain, she said. To tell you everything I just told you in a restaurant or a hotel lobby or anywhere that wasn't an accident on a highway overpass in the rain. She looked at him. I didn't plan that part. He held her gaze. He thought about what it meant to leave a child to protect him. He thought about the specific loneliness of that decision. The one-way door of it, the morning she had picked up her keys and looked at his bedroom door and made a choice she couldn't unmake. He had spent 11 years thinking she had left because she wanted something else. She had left because she had loved him more than her own presence in his life. He did not say what he was feeling. He said something true instead. Carver Flynn, he said. Is he still alive? She looked at him. Something moved in her expression. I don't know, she said. Harlan Bree died 6 years ago, Dominic said. His organization dissolved. Flynn would have been operating independently after that. He paused. Or not operating. Helen looked at her hands. The reason it was 11 years, she said, wasn't only fear. It was also, I didn't know how safe it was. After Bree died. Whether his people were still watching for me. She looked at him. Whether the threat had passed or just gone quiet. Dominic looked at the monitor. He thought about Flynn. He thought about a man who had walked up to a woman in February and told her that the kindest thing she could do for her son was to vanish from his life. He thought about what that man was going to find when Dominic tracked him down. He pressed his hand flat on his knee. He breathed. The threat has passed, he said. Completely. He looked at his mother. You didn't need to be afraid to come back. She looked at him. I was afraid of a different thing by then, she said. What? He said. That you would not want me to, she said. His jaw worked. He looked at the window. November light coming through the hospital blinds in pale strips. You're here now, he said. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But present tense. Solid and real. That's where we start. She nodded. Her eyes were wet. She did not let them fall. She was his mother. She handled things the way he handled things. He recognized it completely. Carver Flynn was alive. Dominic confirmed this the following morning from the hospital parking lot, on the phone with his investigator, while his mother slept in room 412 with her cracked ribs and her sutured forehead and her cardiac monitor doing its reassuring beep. 63 years old, the investigator said. Operating out of the West Side. He runs a private security consulting business. Legitimate front, client list that includes some genuinely legitimate clients. He's been doing this for about 8 years. Pause. He's also been maintaining a file on you. Dominic was very still. A file, he said. Digital, the investigator said. We found it in his system on the scan Marcus ran last night. Movement logs. Visits. Property records. Pause. He's been tracking you for years. Since before Bree died. Dominic looked at the hospital entrance. He thought about his mother in room 412. He thought about Flynn telling her 11 years ago that her presence made Dominic a target. He thought about Flynn maintaining a file on Dominic's movements for years afterward. He thought about the specific cold calculation of a man who had removed a piece from the board, who had cleared a vulnerability as he would have called it, and then continued monitoring the board from a distance. Is there anything in the file about her? Dominic said. My mother. Her location. Pause. Yes, the investigator said. There are 3 entries in the last 2 weeks. Her hotel booking in this city. Her departure from Portland. A note about her scheduled arrival yesterday. Dominic's hand on the phone went white. Flynn had known she was coming. Flynn had known she was here. The sedan with the blown tire. He thought about the white Civic. He thought about a rainy Wednesday evening on the Mercer Street overpass. He thought about a tire that blew on a dry overpass in traffic conditions that did not typically cause tires to blow. He closed his eyes for 2 seconds. He opened them. He called Marcus. The Civic from the overpass, he said. The white one. I need the tow report. Specifically the tire condition, whether it was a normal failure or whether it was compromised. Marcus said 30 minutes. Marcus called back in 20. The left rear tire, Marcus said. There's a puncture mark inconsistent with road debris. The tow driver flagged it to the police. Someone put something in that tire, designed to give way under highway speed but not necessarily before. He paused. Boss. This wasn't an accident. Dominic stood in the parking lot in the November morning. He felt the specific cold clarity he always felt when pieces aligned into a shape he recognized. Flynn had known Helen was coming to this city. Flynn had arranged for the tire to fail on the overpass. Flynn had decided that the safer play, 11 years after removing her from Dominic's life, was to ensure she never arrived at her destination. He had not counted on Dominic being 3 cars behind her on the same overpass. He had not counted on Dominic getting out of his car in the rain. He had not counted on the fact that the person who pulled Helen Farrell from her wrecked car was the person Flynn had originally been protecting from her. Dominic went back upstairs. He sat beside his mother's bed. She was awake. She had been awake for an hour, she told him, trying to decide whether to call the nurse or let the headache manage itself. He looked at her. I need to tell you something, he said. And I need you to tell me immediately if there's anything you want to add to what I'm about to say. She looked at him with the alert, focused attention she apparently always had. Even with a concussion and cracked ribs, she looked at him with complete presence. He told her. All of it. The timing. She listened. She was quiet for a moment when he finished. He's been watching both of us, she said. Yes, he said. He knew I was coming. Yes. She looked at the window. She was doing something he recognized. Processing. Organizing information. Moving from shock to understanding to what comes after understanding. He removed me from your life to protect you from being leveraged, she said slowly. And then he watched you for years to see whether you would become something worth leveraging. And when I came back, he decided the vulnerability was returning, Dominic said. And he preferred to close it permanently. She looked at her hands on the blanket. Her hands were steady. He looked at them being steady. He thought about her telling him she had left to protect him. He thought about Flynn deciding 11 years later that the protection was insufficient and needed to be made permanent. He thought about the rain on the overpass. He thought about, please, don't die. What are you going to do? She said. He looked at her. I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again, he said. In whatever form that requires. She looked at him. Dominic, she said. Yes, he said. She was quiet for a moment. I need you to tell me, she said, that what you're going to do is something you can carry. She looked at him. Not for my sake. For yours. She paused. I know what you are. I've known since before you knew. I'm not asking you to be something different. I'm asking you to make sure that whatever you do tonight, you can carry it. He looked at his mother. She had just told him she left to protect him. She had driven across the country with a heart condition to tell him the truth. She had survived a crash that was not an accident. And her first thought, sitting in a hospital bed with a concussion, was whether her son could carry the weight of what he was about to do. He was 30 years old. He was the most feared man in 3 districts of this city. He had walls built from 19 years of practice. He looked at his mother. I can carry it, he said. Then go, she said. He went. Carver Flynn's private security office was on Aldgate Street, ground floor of a 4-story commercial building, with a glass door etched with the company name in conservative gold letters. Dominic walked in at noon. Not with force. Not with a team. He had Marcus in the car on the street and 2 other people positioned, but Dominic went in alone because some conversations required a specific geometry and this was one of them. Flynn was at his desk. He was 63, silver-haired, with the trim, maintained quality of a man who had spent decades in professional proximity to danger and had absorbed its discipline into his physical habits. He looked up when Dominic came through the door. His expression did not change. That, more than anything, confirmed it. A man who was surprised by a visitor showed surprise. Flynn was not surprised. He had been waiting. Dominic Farrell, Flynn said. Carver, Dominic said. He sat in the chair across the desk without being invited. He looked at Flynn. He looked at him the way he looked at things when the looking was the assessment and everything that followed came from what the looking found. Flynn met his gaze. The woman on the overpass, Flynn said. I heard it was an accident. You know it wasn't, Dominic said. Pause. I know, Flynn said. I arranged it. He said it the way someone said something that was simply a fact they had decided not to pretend otherwise about. I've been monitoring both of you for 11 years. When I saw she was coming back, I made a decision. To kill her, Dominic said. To close a vulnerability, Flynn said. The same decision I made 11 years ago. He looked at Dominic directly. Bree asked me to remove her as a liability. I found the cleanest way to do it that didn't require actually. He paused. I gave her a way out. He took it. That was the appropriate resolution. And when she came back, Dominic said. The appropriate resolution changed, Flynn said. Dominic sat with this. He thought about a man who had spent 11 years framing his actions as professional service, removing vulnerabilities, applying appropriate resolutions, while a woman had lived alone in Portland with a heart condition and a worn photograph. What did Bree pay you? Dominic said. For the original arrangement. That's not relevant, Flynn said. I'm making it relevant, Dominic said. Flynn looked at him. 40,000, he said. 11 years ago. Dominic nodded. And the overpass, he said. Who paid for that? Self-directed, Flynn said. Threat management. Whose threat? Dominic said. Flynn held his gaze. Mine, he said. Dominic looked at him. You were afraid, Dominic said. Not of leverage. Of exposure. If she reached me and told me what you did, the original arrangement, Bree's direction, your position becomes considerably more complicated. Flynn was quiet. The file you maintain on me, Dominic said. You've been watching to see whether I ever found out. Watching to see whether she ever tried to come back. He paused. The moment she booked the hotel, you started the clock. Flynn's jaw was tight. You're a smart man, he said. You've always been. Bree said so. Bree is dead, Dominic said. His organization is gone. You've been operating independently on a problem that stopped being relevant years ago and chose to make it relevant again. He leaned forward slightly. You tried to kill my mother on a highway overpass. I was 3 cars behind her. Flynn looked at him. Something moved behind his eyes, the first genuine thing Dominic had seen there. I didn't know you were on that overpass, Flynn said. No, Dominic said. You didn't. He pulled out his phone. He set it on the desk between them. The screen showed the text exchange with his investigator, the tire analysis, the puncture report, the police flag, Flynn's digital file with its entries about Helen's hotel booking and travel itinerary. Flynn looked at the screen. He looked at Dominic. This goes to the right people, Dominic said, and you face criminal charges for the tire. Conspiracy to commit murder. The original arrangement with Bree is also documented. He paused. You will be a man who arranged the death of a woman for $40,000 11 years ago and then tried again when she came back. He looked at Flynn steadily. That is what your file becomes. Flynn looked at the phone. He was calculating. He was always calculating. What's the alternative? Flynn said. You close the operation, Dominic said. The business, the file, everything connected to either of us. You move to somewhere outside the state and you don't come back. He paused. You also provide a signed statement about the original Bree arrangement. Complete, accurate, attested. Which goes into a secure location and is released if anything happens to either of us going forward. You're offering me a way out, Flynn said. I'm offering you the only alternative to charges, Dominic said. Which is not a generous offer. It's a transaction. Flynn looked at the desk. He looked at the phone. He looked at Dominic. He thought about charges. He thought about a courtroom. He thought about 11 years of careful operation and a single decision about a tire that had brought him to this desk. Signed statement, he said. Tonight, Dominic said. My attorney's office. Witnessed. Flynn was quiet for a long moment. All right, he said. He said it with the flatness of a man who had made a calculation and arrived at the only viable outcome. Dominic picked up his phone. He stood. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Flynn one last time, at the silver hair and the careful presentation and the 63-year-old man who had walked up to a woman in February 11 years ago and told her that disappearing was the kindest thing she could do. He did not say anything else. He walked out. He stood on Aldgate Street in the November noon light. He called his mother's room at Mercy General. She answered on the second ring. It's handled, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Are you all right? She said. He looked at the street. He thought about the question. He thought about 30 years of building walls and the specific particular difficulty of what it was going to take some of them down. Working on it, he said. She laughed. It was a small sound, brief, surprised. The laugh of someone who had not laughed in a long time and had not expected to do it today. It was his mother's laugh. He had not heard it in 11 years. He stood on the street and let it be there for a moment. I'm coming back to the hospital, he said. I'll tell the nurse to bring another chair, she said. She stayed in the hospital for 2 days. He came both days. Not for the full day, he had things that required his attention the way things always required his attention, and he had not built what he had built by disappearing for days at a time. But he came in the morning and he came in the evening and he sat in the chair beside her bed and they talked. They talked about small things first. Portland. The neighborhood she lived in. A quiet street, she said, with big trees and a coffee shop 2 blocks away that made a very good Americano. A garden she kept on the apartment balcony. A cat she had owned for 6 years who had died the previous spring and whom she still described in the present tense sometimes before catching herself. His name was Walter, she said. He was very opinionated about food, she said. Dominic looked at her, describing a cat with the fond precision of someone who had loved him genuinely. He thought about what her life in Portland had looked like. The quiet street and the coffee shop and the opinionated cat and the Sunday mornings with the percolator, because of course she still used the percolator. That was not something that changed. He thought about 11 years of that, alone. He thought about $40,000 and a man named Carver Flynn. He put that in the same place he put other things that required compartmentalization, and he focused on his mother. The garden on the balcony, he said. What do you grow? Tomatoes, she said. Always tomatoes. And herbs. And one very stubborn rosemary plant that refuses to die regardless of my neglect. Rosemary is resilient, he said. So am I, she said. Simply. He looked at her. She looked back. 2 days in. The sutures were healing. The ribs were painful but manageable. The cardiac monitor had been removed the previous afternoon. The stress-related irregularity had resolved. The cardiologist had been satisfied. She was going to be all right. He had not said that out loud until now. He said it now, internally, in the specific private language of someone who had been afraid to say something until he was certain enough to mean it. She was going to be all right. On the second evening she asked him about his life. Not the parts she had figured out. The buildings, the territory, the general outline. She asked about the particular. Are you happy? She said. He considered the question. I'm effective, he said. That's not what I asked, she said. He looked at the window. I've built something I'm proud of, he said. I have people I trust. I have work that matters in its way. He paused. Happy is a complicated inventory. She looked at him. You're 30 years old, she said. You have walls that men twice your age haven't built yet. I had good motivation, he said. She pressed her lips together. I'm sorry, she said. For that. For being the motivation. He looked at her. You were trying to protect me, he said. I know, she said. And I was wrong about the method. She held his gaze. I should have found another way. I should have been smarter. I should have. You were doing what someone told you was necessary, he said. You were afraid for me. He paused. That's not something I need you to apologize for. It's something I need to understand. She held his gaze. Are you able to, she said. Understand it? He thought about it. I'm working on it, he said. The same words he had said on Aldgate Street. She smiled. The same small, surprised smile. You said that before, she said. It's still accurate, he said. She looked at her hands. Come to Portland, she said. At Christmas. The apartment is small but I make room. I'll make the thing with the lamb that you used to. She stopped. If you still eat lamb. I still eat lamb, he said. She looked at him. Christmas, she said. He looked at the window. At the November light. He thought about 19 years old and a coffee cup still warm. He thought about please. Don't die. He thought about what it meant to drive to a hospital for a stranger and find your mother. He thought about what it meant to have someone to go to at Christmas. Christmas, he said. She nodded. She looked at her hands. Walter would have liked you, she said. The cat. I've never owned a cat, he said. They don't care about that, she said. They make their own decisions. He looked at her. He thought, this is what it sounds like. A mother talking to her son. This is the shape of it. Small things, warm things, the particular intimacy of people who know each other. He had not had this in 11 years. He was going to have it now. That was enough. Helen left the hospital on a Friday. Dominic drove her to the hotel where she had booked her room. The room she had never checked into, having gone from the airport to the overpass to the hospital without any of the intermediate steps she had planned. The hotel room was ready. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the room with the specific assessment of someone who had been planning to arrive here for 2 weeks and was arriving 3 days later than intended and considerably more battered. It's a nice room, she said. You should rest, he said. I've been in a hospital for 2 days, she said. I've done nothing but rest. She looked at him. Sit down. He sat in the chair by the window. She sat on the bed. They were quiet for a moment. I've thought about this moment for 4 years, she said. Telling you. Being in the same room with you again. She looked at her hands. I had a whole structure for it. What I would say. How I would explain it. In what order. She looked at him. The overpass was not in the structure. Life rarely follows the structure, he said. No, she agreed. But I think it might have been better this way. She looked at him. You saved me before you knew who I was. You said please don't die to a stranger on a highway in the rain. That's who you are, Dominic. Without the name and the history and all the weight of us. She paused. That's who you are underneath everything. He looked at the window. He thought about rain on his jacket. He thought about a door that took his shoulder to open. He thought about a hand grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. You grabbed onto me, he said. Of course I did, she said. He looked at her. I didn't know it was you, she said. I was barely conscious. I didn't know anything except that there was a hand on my forehead and a voice saying stay with me. She held his gaze. I held on because the voice sounded like someone who meant it. He was quiet. He thought about the walls he had built. He thought about the specific practiced art of sealing things away, the way he had sealed her name, sealed the morning, sealed the coffee cup still warm. He thought about what it had cost him to have those walls. He thought about what it had cost her. Flynn's signed statement was in a secure location with his attorney. The operation had been disbanded. Whatever surveillance had been maintained on Helen had been terminated. She could come and go from Portland without watching for a tail. She was safe. That was the first thing. The second thing was sitting across the hotel room in the November afternoon light. The third thing was going to take longer. He had not said the word forgiveness to himself because it was a word that required precision and he was still assembling the precision. He had not said the word closure because that word implied an ending and what he was looking at felt like a beginning. Incomplete, tentative, the beginning of a beginning. He was working on it. That was all any of it was. The working on. He drove back to Portland with her in December. He had not planned this. She had driven herself to this city. Her car was at an impound lot, which he had cleared through the appropriate channels, and she had intended to drive herself home. He had informed her that she was not driving herself anywhere with 2 healing ribs and a recent concussion. She had argued. He had not argued back. She had looked at him. You're stubborn, she said. I learned it from someone, he said. She had let him drive. The rosemary plant on the balcony was, as promised, extraordinarily resilient. He ate lamb at Christmas in a small apartment on a quiet street in Portland, and his mother sat across the table from him with the specific warm attention of someone who had not had a person to cook for in a very long time and found that the cooking came back immediately. Walter's empty bed was still in the corner of the living room. She hadn't moved it. He didn't say anything about it. This is what this story is really about. Not the crash. Not Flynn. Not the file or the tire or the signed statement. It is about a rainy Wednesday evening when a man got out of his car and walked toward something he didn't understand yet. Who pressed his hand against a stranger's forehead. Who said please, don't die. To someone he did not know was his mother. And she held on. Because the voice sounded like someone who meant it. Sometimes the people we've lost are closer than we think. Sometimes the reunion doesn't come through a door we plan to walk through. Sometimes it comes through a crumpled car door in the rain, and we don't know what we're reaching for until we've already reached. Before you go, we want to ask you something that goes straight to the heart of this story. Is there someone in your life you have lost? Not to death but to distance, silence, time, or a decision that seemed right once and now sits differently. Someone whose name you have stopped saying out loud because saying it costs too much? And if you could reach through the distance, would you? Tell us in the comments. We have an incredible community here from all across America and around the world, from New York to Texas, from the Pacific Northwest to the Deep South, from the UK to Australia and everywhere in between. Every comment you leave tells us something real about what people carry. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to know that it's not too late to reach. We'll see you in the next story. Stay kind.